Go on. Okay. My name is Peter. I'm a recovered alcoholic. Grateful to be alive and sober and part of a sacred place called Alcoholics Anonymous. And before we get going, Ollie's been driving me nuts for the last year getting this thing off the ground. And he said even as recent as last night, 8 o'clock sharp. And I told him alcoholics can't count and tell time. And when we do one of these things, 8 o'clock means 9 o'clock, and it's 9 o'clock. So keep coming back. It'll get better. I also want to thank Ali for getting me up at 8 o'clock to get to an AA meeting and speak. Usually we show up that early to get a drink, not to get recovery. So we're all counting how many hours we got together. There's about 6 of us on about 4 hours of sleep. So we'll see where God takes us this weekend, hopefully have some fun with this, and share with you experientially what has happened to us as a result of the 12 steps in the big book, Alcoholics Anonymous. Experientially what this fellowship has done for us as a Band-Aid on an open wound when we got here. And experientially what sponsorship looks like in passing a message on basic, one of the basic messages services we provide in Alcoholics Anonymous is one drunk working with another, and Comes of Age talks about that. So June 23rd, 1988 was when God separated me from alcohol. And I'm here as a recovered alcoholic, as I try to show up on most days as a recovered alcoholic, separated from alcohol a few years now, and living in this place called the Sunlight of the Spirit. And not calling myself recovered would be just falsely humble. So it is about speaking truth, and I'd rather be accused of telling you the truth than be accused of telling you a lie. And when we get to do these things, perhaps as Teresa talks, or somewhere in this journey with me here, at times we might get disturbed and uncomfortable. And our job is to comfort the disturbed and disturb the comfortable. It isn't about splitting the room. It isn't about, big bookers against non-big bookers. That's someone else's workshop. This isn't about us against them. And perhaps you're sitting here and haven't gone through the steps and you're sober a while. Or perhaps you don't pray and meditate as regular as the book suggests. Or maybe you've been sponsorless for a while. This isn't about us getting against you. And perhaps some of the things you hear this weekend you just can't reconcile. That's fine. And so what I try to create when I do these things is just an experience, and maybe raise the level of awareness, which is always the greatest agent for change. And maybe put a spotlight on some areas that we need to take a peek at and we just haven't done yet, and perhaps make us a little bit more accountable to this journey to our recovery, and maybe participate more in our recovery. And, what about if we're experiencing freedom? Do we want to get freer? And if we're any sort of bondage that's holding us back, the bondage of self, usually the catalyst is always the mind. Do I want to get past that and free of any kind of bondage? Because I can tell you from my own experience that this process of recovery isn't linear but transformational. So we can be sitting in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, and wrapped up in bondage just like a newcomer. And so we tend to look at the amount of years that we're sober as some sort of badge and honor that I am now a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. Well, you are. But it doesn't mean we've recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body and transcended alcoholism. Not rise above alcoholism, because when we do that, we're in trouble. Not rise above God, because when we do that, we're in trouble. But just recovered from the isms that accompany alcoholism. And how do I get to meet the book where I currently am with 5 or 10 or 15 years sober? How do I get to go through the steps again when I've been through them numerous times? How do I get this book to meet me where I am when I knew it's easy? I'm falling apart. I'm bleeding out. I don't know which end is up, and all I want to do is stop drinking and take the heat of the streets off my back. And I'll do anything to do that. And we start going through the steps, and little by slowly we start to wake up. We realize we're not thinking about drinking, and seems like our point of view on life has changed. And we're having this relationship with God begin. Relationships seem to get a little bit better. We sleep at night. But what about someone like me, for example, who goes through the work once a year? How do I get this book to meet me with a few years sober, gone through the work numerous times? And one of the great things you could do, if you're sitting here wondering, how do I do this again? How do I have the book meet me where I am? How do I apply the steps when I'm not even thinking about drinking for numerous years? Is the greatest thing to look at is the bedevilments on page 52. Now, I never knew what bedevilment meant. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. If you use a word like bedevilment, you got beat up on the way home. Yeah. A bedevilment is something that torments, frustrates, and harasses you. And if I had a neighbor who tormented, frustrated, or harassed me, or someone who worked for me who had that kind of temperament, I'd probably take some action to get rid of that. Yet when it comes to bedevilments in our own life or my life, we keep inviting them in, hoping they'll go away. We try to work on this stuff. Or we don't even talk about it because the ego has gotten so big, because we've experienced the reemergence of ego that we can't tell anyone, which is even more dangerous. And on page 52, it talks about we're having trouble with personal relationships. And what we do is take these statements and flip them into a question. They're not talking about the occasional spat we might have with our spouse or disagreement with a coworker or just something like that. They're talking about trouble in personal relationships where it's ongoing. In fact, I'm sitting on the couch. Everything's good. The bills are paid. The job is good. The health is good. The relationships are good. Everything's good. The money's good. And yet my mind says, yeah, but remember that time in the third grade. And suddenly I'm replaying something. Or no matter how good the external world looks, my internal condition is not in a God experience, and I'm starting to replay things and I'm not getting along with folks in my head. I make up drama. I project drama. Can't control my emotional nature, prey to misery and depression. We wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning, go to put on our shoes and break a shoelace, and we say it's going to be that kind of day. You know? Our day is made based on what other people are feeling about us, other people's moods, the weather, whatever it might be. And my whole journey is based on external conditions looking right, and I quickly find out I'm playing God. A prey to misery and depression. We get bad news, someone has ill health, or someone passes away, and our life is shattered because of it. Well, it hurts, and we'll have a broken heart, but life's not shattered. Or perhaps you don't get the raise or the bonus you were planning on, and the whole day is ruined, and we come home and take it out on a significant other, prey to misery and depression. If everyone would only do as I want, because I'm always afraid of losing what I have and not getting what I want. And what I have found out is I need to be willing to be made fundamentally different from the inside out, a complete and total surrender. And many of us show up and I like what you have to offer, but I want to do what you did. I see the beauty of a spiritual transformation. I like the way it sounds. I like the way these people have the walk. But that can coexist with the reluctance to do what they've done. How willing am I to surrender everything? Where I live, my relationship, my money, my career, everything I think is mine. How willing am I to surrender all of that? Because if I'm not willing, this is my experience, to surrender everything, then God isn't everything. God is some things, or perhaps God is nothing. Because I'm still in control of my life, and as long as I'm in control of my life, I will cause problems. I will experience bedevilments, and I will give you even bedevilments. Because I'm still running a place of self-will, and I'm the director. I'm playing God and assigning people roles. So we get up, and you ever notice when you wake up in the morning, you don't start a conversation with the voices in the head. They're already going and you join in. Right? Soon as you wake up, something's going on. They started without me. And then you try to get in there. And you're up at, say, like I'm up really early. 5 o'clock, I'm already up. But by 5:15, I'm usually annoyed because I don't like the dialogue that's going on. And so by the time we get out the door, I'm pissed off. At who, I don't know. I'm just pissed off. And when I get to the office, everyone needs to know I'm very angry today. When we wake up in the morning, think about this for a minute. When you wake up in the morning and you're sitting down having your first cup of coffee, newcomers usually having 45 Red Bulls and then go meditate, right? But you're sitting down having your first cup of coffee, and the sun is just coming up, and we think we're the only ones sitting at that table. Well, here's the truth. There's about 20 people sitting at that table. You have the AA guru. You have Mother Teresa or Moses, depending on your sex, although nowadays anything goes, sitting at that table, right? And they're preaching the good word to you. Then you have the AA cop, the Gestapo there, going to go into home group and tell everyone they're doing it wrong. Right? I'm on the circuit a lot, and Butch can verify. There's people who do this who AA's got it wrong until they get to the podium. So you got that guy sitting there. Right? Then you have the entrepreneur guy. Then you got the sex kitten or the stud, depending on your sex. They're sitting there that they're going to meet Mr. or Mrs. Right at the next group anniversary. Right? Then you got the parent, and you got the child, and you got all these roles. Now, here's the deal. They're all talking to you at once, and they don't all get along. So they're talking over each other, and they're arguing with each other. These are called manifestations of self. And I had to be convinced that this self must die in order for me to have a good life. But they insist on having all my attention. They demand obedience because they all live in the mind. And here I am, my first cup of coffee, and I got all these people talking to me, and I'm trying to entertain all of them and satisfy all of them. And there's one other voice sitting at that table. And that's the quiet voice. That's the God voice. When that one talks and says, be still and know I walk with you, or something like that, what we do, if you're anything like me, is I go, would you please be quiet? I'm trying to pay attention. At the very beginning, we don't even know the God voice is speaking to us because it's such a foreign voice. It sounds like a different language. That's why one of the reasons why I have sponsors to interpret for us. Because we don't know this godly voice. We can't even see it in other people. That's why I needed a bulldog as a sponsor, because I didn't know how to look for God in my sponsor. He told me, you do this or don't call me. Okay, I'll take that order. But we don't even know how to hear that. Prey to misery and depression, can't control my emotional nature. Full of fear. A feeling of uselessness, can't seem to be a real help to other people. These are bedevilments. These are the things that walk with us when we walk into a meeting and someone says, Joe, how you doing? We say, I'm fine. I'm absolutely wonderful. On the way over in the car, we were arguing and talking to all those voices until we crossed the threshold into the AA meeting. We turn into Moses. And when we leave the meeting, all those people are waiting back in the car for us. But a book says we're full of fear. Bedevilments. Not the thing where you're fearful about something. Maybe you have some health issues, or a loved one has some health issues. Or maybe the company is laying people off and you have some fear, am I going to lose my job? What's my plan B? Or perhaps some days you just wake up and you just feel a little fearful about things. I turned 58 in July. And from time to time I'm thinking, well, how many more birthdays do I have? I get that once in a while. Whether it's early in the morning or late at night when I put my head on a pillow. And so you get that. They're talking about full of fear, where you're living in that all the time. Impending doom. I'm not going to get what I want, lose what I have, and it goes on and on and on. And the ego has reconstructed, and I can't say, hey, listen, can you get a minute? I'm wrapped in fear, and I can't even get past it in my inventory. I don't know what to do about this. Can't seem to be a real help to other people. Uselessness. By the way, all those bedevilments, like every piece of inventory we will write, like every trouble we will have, part of the spiritual malady and unmanageability and self-reliance is all because of one culprit, and that is a 4-letter word called fear. It cuts through everything. It's the evil and corroding thread. My book says the fabric of my existence was shot through with it, fear. And the reason why I'm experiencing fear is because I don't have God in me at that moment. I don't have a God relationship or trust or dependence upon this power called God. It's about me running the show and trying to get a desired outcome. And perhaps I want it that way because I don't want to surrender every area of my life. And as long as I'm not surrendering everything to God, what I am doing is enforcing my will upon God, which means I have fear of the future all the time and regrets about the past. And that's why I'm never just okay. I can't transcend this earthly thing and get into godliness. The world still owns me, and I'm in bondage to it. And my mind demands obedience, and I'm in bondage to that. That's really my higher power. You know, I pray for an hour, get up off my knees, and so as soon as I'm up off my knees, I'm back into self-reliance again. And I pretend to be godly. I pretend to do godly things. I say the right things, but secretly in here, I'm not so good. And I'm not wearing the world like a loose garment, like the carpenter says. The world owns me. I'm wrapped up in bondage of my own mind because troubles are my own making. And what blows my mind, because I see this a lot, we offer a prescription plan. Like if I had the flu and I went to the doctor with a fever and a sore throat and a congested chest and I'm feeling kind of weak and tired, I go to my doctor and he says, you have the flu, here's a script, fill it out, take the antibiotic, in a week or so you'll be fine. I'm going to run to the prescription place, get it done, and feel better because I don't like the way I'm feeling. Yet we're dying, many of us, of alcoholism, which wants me dead will settle for me drunk, and for us to drink is to die, and we give a new drunk the big prescription plan that we could walk them through. And in a very short time, we will get past this thing called alcoholism, and we push back. It's really interesting when we're living in the dark so long, how difficult it is to step into the light. There's something that goes, the truth will set you free. Know the truth, and the truth will set you free. I've heard that for years before Alcoholics Anonymous. In fact, the motto of my high school back in Brooklyn was, the truth will set you free. I had no idea what that meant. The truth for the day, whatever the good word was. Be honest. I didn't really know what that meant. And we talk about that in Alcoholics Anonymous. The truth will set you free. And what is the truth? The only truth I can share with you that I know to be truthful is God. Know God, and God will set you free, which is what we will find as we're around here a little while, what Alcoholics Anonymous is really all about driving a drunk like me to God. Because our book says we can't transmit something we haven't got. Now, sometimes we replace service with God. It's a great way not to get God and a great way not to pay attention to my own stuff by continually working with people. I can deflect my own malady by doing that. I have this assembly line of people coming to my house, and I'm working and working and working, but I never hold up a mirror to me. There comes a point in this journey where I need to drop to my knees, bow head and bend a knee, and surrender my life to God. Step 3 demands that. By the way, if we're in a place of we're thinking the steps are suggestions, we probably got a step 1 problem. You know, you're going to go skydiving. I suggest you pull the ripcord. You really don't have to, but good luck. So June 23rd, 1980, I get separated from alcohol, and that was 29 years ago yesterday, and Mary and I were talking about that on June 22nd. She says, remember where you were? Vaguely. I was in the back of an abandoned building in lower Manhattan, an area called Alphabet City. And that's where I was living, in the back end of an abandoned building in Alphabet City. And back in the day, it was a sort of spot back then. It wasn't a place you took a walk with your loved one and let's go down to Alphabet City. There were people like me running through the streets, and if you lived there, you were just unfortunate. And I took up residency in the back of a hallway. And I had 6 treatment centers I've been to. I tried Alcoholics Anonymous, showed up drunk, shared drunk, critiqued drunk, went to my religious community. I'm a Catholic. They threw holy water on me, blessed me, anointed me, got drunk. Went to therapists and psychiatrists. Thank God they didn't medicate me, got drunk. So I knew all these things didn't work, and I knew God wasn't working anymore. I knew psychiatrists and therapists won't work. I know treatment doesn't work. I know A doesn't work. I was at the jumping off place, and how dark it is before the dawn. This is after years of drinking. God got me sober around 28 years old. My first drunk came when I was 14. So I had a whole bunch of years of wrecking my life. Some of us can do that in 5 years. Some of us takes 30 years to do it. But it took about 14, 15 years to wind up in the back of an abandoned building in lower Manhattan, losing complete contact with a loving family. We weren't the perfect family. We had our stuff. Mom was alcoholic and addicted to Valium and committed suicide when I was 14. And we had numerous trips to the asylum for her. You know, my dad was a gambler, a street guy, gangster. You know? There were no warm, fuzzy talks by the fireplace in my house. There was barking. And the lessons I got, I should have known better when no one gave me a handbook. I was terrified of my dad growing up. I mean, if you walk in a room, I'd be at attention and just try to get out of it as quick as possible, so you lie a lot and play roles a lot. And the buffer was Mom, and now she's long gone. And I'll tell you this so-called relationship with God and I split as well. Because if God was so loving, and we have this, some of us in AA still have this, if God was so loving and caring and forgiving, then why did he get Mom sick and why did he make her commit suicide? This thing called God is Disney fairy tales. I got to man up, but I didn't know how to do that. The only role model I had was my dad. I liked music. I loved the hippies in the 60s. I liked sports, and my dad thought that was all for sissies. So we had this huge communication problem, two different cultures, two different lifestyles. My dad's the alpha male, you know, the general. No time for, you know, a soft heart, no time for none of that. That's what he would tell me. That's what girls do. You get told enough of that, you start to wonder, maybe I'm not really a good guy. You know, question your own manhood even. Ages 8 to 10, I was sexually abused by someone, what I always call a distant relative. You know, the names are not given to protect the innocent here. This guy used to come over every once in a while, and my family thought he was an okay guy. Sometimes he'd babysit. Sometimes he'd just come by. You know, I remember being petrified about this, and it was just a long 2-year journey. About ages 8 to 10, that was a secret. So I show up to the corner one time on a Saturday night in Brooklyn, and these guys are drinking beer, Colt 45 beer. And they were older, they were mature, they were worldly, they were knowledgeable, they were 17 years old. I'm 14, these are men. You know, I didn't have a girlfriend yet. I didn't have my first experience with a woman yet. These guys were doing it, and they knew how to drink. So they were the men. They were my go-to guys. But I was reluctant to drink with them because of this guy called Dad who was cunning, baffling, and powerful, and he always had a habit of showing up when I was about to get into something not good. And so I was afraid to drink. But this Saturday night, I told the story a million times. I grabbed the quart of Colt 45 beer. I took a few pops off of it. Nothing happened. My dad didn't show up, so I drank some more, and I drank some more. And somewhere in drinking that quart, I got nice. I started to feel okay. The beer didn't taste so good. I remember it was kind of warm. I still remember that. But it started to feel okay. I started to feel okay. I started to look at the world with a new pair of glasses. My point of view quickly got distorted. Growing up, my hero, besides musicians, was Mickey Mantle. And one of my dreams besides music was to play center field for the New York Yankees. I just saw that as a little boy growing up. The mix in center field, well, he was in first base by then, but I want to play center field for the Yankees. And I remember that night, I picked up in my point of view about half a block down the avenue was a social club where these mobsters would hang out. And suddenly I caught them in the cars and the jewelry and the whole thing, and forget Mickey Mantle, forget the Rolling Stones, that's what I want to be. And suddenly caring for my brothers and going home to my dad was really a wimp, being a wimp. I wanted to be like those guys. As I continued to drink, I got taller, I got better looking, the girls got prettier, I packed into the mainstream, I was part of life at last, the pain of losing my mom was gone, the fear of I was Al Pacino around midnight. It was beautiful. I knew nothing about what we're going to get into, step one, and what makes me alcoholic. And drinking a lot doesn't mean I'm alcoholic, because we have hard drinkers who drink more than us. But what it was doing to me while I was drinking and what I was thinking about when I wasn't drinking. And I remember I went home that night, and everyone, was heading home. I was in panic, immediate panic. Don't pull the plug on this. I finally can feel life. I finally feel in control. I can finally breathe. And life doesn't hurt anymore. Even now, with 29 years sober, I don't do well just doing abstinence, guys. What I need to continually do is kill the ego and feed the spirit. And many of us got it backwards. I don't do life well just doing abstinence. I need some sort of spiritual muscles to walk through this life. Just to get to work, just to get in my car and drive. On my own, I fail miserably. That's why I never offer anyone do life on life's terms. I tell you how I do life on life's terms. I need a double vodka just to get out of bed. And there's no such thing as fidelity in my relationships. The external world owns me. And no matter how much I own, I'm still not good enough. That's me doing life on life's terms, fear-based and insecure, and an ego the size of this room. And you need to feed me on cue. I don't do well. And somehow many of us got, maybe not here, some of us got into this idea that just going to meetings treats alcoholism. It's a Band-Aid on an open wound. It's the fellowship, the sacred fellowship, where we come to meet, we join shoulder to shoulder. You lean on me, I lean on you. No one else is going to hear our nonsense. This is the only place on the planet I can meet Butch for the first time and tell him the most god-awful, terrible, nasty things I did, and he says, give me your number, I'll give you a call. You go down to your local grocery store, they call 911. But meetings doesn't treat alcoholism. It's one part of a three-sided triangle. My big book doesn't treat alcoholism. My sponsor doesn't treat alcoholism. Having a service commitment doesn't treat alcoholism. But when you put all those things together, they treat alcoholism. And I need to be living equally in all three sides of the triangle, not just making meetings and top-heavy in there. And doing nothing with the spirit, and doing nothing in sponsoring people. And something happens when I begin to live equally in all three sides, that circle around the triangle, little by slowly, the gaps in that circle, my resentments, my fears, and my life conditions begin to close, and that circle becomes whole and closed and complete with no beginning and no end, just is. Like with God, just is. My weekend drinking became during the week, and consequences started to get worse. Bill says there were many unhappy scenes in this sumptuous apartment. There were unhappy scenes in my home. Sorry about this. And I made my first treatment center because I got caught stealing from my dad. I walked into my first treatment center way, way, way away from conceding to my innermost self that I was alcoholic. I got caught. And so I do 28 days in treatment, get out and get drunk. Second treatment center, third, fourth, fifth treatment center, the same MO. Just get the heat off of me. In my fifth treatment center, I was put away for 9 weeks. And back in the day, it was a 28-day model they used to work with back in the States. Thank you. I always need a drink wherever I go. That works. So in my fifth treatment center, they said, we can't discharge you after 28 days because you're going to drink and die. And so what they did in this fifth treatment center, they wrote up a lot of psych issues that I didn't have. So my insurance company would say, this cat's really sick, we got to keep him longer. And they held on to me for 9 weeks. Now back in the 80s, that was a really long time to stay in a treatment center. But they kept me for 9 weeks. And guys, after 9 weeks, I got put on weight. I had color back in my face. I was going to the gym and doing a little working. I was holding my food. I was even sleeping. I looked fairly healthy. And about a week or so before they discharged me, I remember thinking, I'm gold right now. I'm great. I haven't thought about drinking or taking non-conference approved dry goods. I'm good to go. And then they discharged me on a Saturday morning. And as soon as I hit the fresh air, out of the hospital, it was immediately met with alcoholism. Not only that I felt like I needed a drink, but the voices woke up. I was full of anxiety, chatter of 1,000 voices. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't talk. I was a bundle of nerves, and I just kept thinking, now if I get a drink in me, I can go to an AA meeting. And I hung on for 2 days. of what I now know is white-knuckle sobriety. Just walking around, busy work, I can't sleep, tossing and turning. I'm really not good, and fear is eating me alive. On Monday morning, I went downtown Brooklyn to the liquor store I'd always get liquor from and waited for the gentleman to open up his store. And soon as he opened up the gate, I flew in there, put my money under the petition, and asked him for a pint of Mr. Boston Blackberry Brandy. Now, it wasn't about social drinking. That was my life in that bottle. And so I cracked the seal. I drank the liquor down as fast as I can, and suddenly I felt in control. I can breathe. The voices stopped. The sweating stopped. My stomach settled down. I'm good. Now, we know lots of people who come home and have a glass of wine after a long day, or maybe have a martini after a long day, or maybe just a shot or two after a long day, and then have dinner with the kids and the wife and watch some TV, fall asleep, and go to work. So when I drank that pint of Mr. Boston Blackberry Brandy, it worked on that uncomfortable feeling I was having. That nervous condition, it works. That's what it's supposed to do. If I ate a couple of pills, it would have worked. The problem was this. Once I finished the first pint, I had to go back into the liquor store and get a second pint. I finished the second pint. I'm now drunk, which means I'm now looking for a third pint and pills. But I'm out of money, and quickly I'm panhandling to get just a few bucks to go back into the liquor store, get another pint, hustle up some more money, go into the projects. I don't know if you have projects out here, go into the hood, and cop Valium. Because I love drinking and eating Valium. And as our book says, thus started one more journey to the asylum for Jim for Pete Marinelli, because trapdoors have trapdoors. While I'm waiting outside the liquor store, and the Saturday and Sunday that preceded, my body did not need alcohol. I was past post-acute withdrawal syndrome. My body did not need alcohol. My body did not need alcohol, nor did it need any other drug. I was fine. My body was not in craving. My body was fine with me. But the mind is another issue. The main problem for me centers in the mind, not the body. My mind was in a state of obsession to the point where my body felt like it needed a drink. I was hurting. My hands were shaking. My stomach's upset. There's no reason for this other than my mind talked me into, we need a drink and we feel sick. Some of you guys are into cocaine. Do you ever notice when you go in to cop cocaine, you have to run to the restroom real quick? What's that all about? There was nothing wrong with your belly an hour or two before that. And suddenly, uh-oh. So I come into Alcoholics Anonymous, and I think just going to meetings is going to treat that mind. And having a sponsor is going to treat that mind. And having life on my terms is going to treat that mind because it's cunning, baffling, and powerful, and very patient to lay around and wait. And so it got me. I signed myself out of my 6th treatment center after a day and a half because my mind said we need a drink and we can't go through this detox anymore. Marion has a great phrase. I think I overreacted again. And I'll control and regulate my drinking. It's the setup and then the ambush. I sign myself out. I run to the liquor store, get a pint, and I do it again. You ever do this where you can't get drunk and you can't get sober and you can't even commit suicide because I tried that? And when you finish the pint, you look at it and you curse yourself for being a weakling and you slam the bottle down on the floor and it breaks in a million pieces and I hate you and I hate my life and I'm done. And you go to the liquor store and get another pint because you can't stop because I don't have power, choice, or control. And it wasn't until June of 1988, and by the way, that particular day, I didn't plan on quitting. That was given to me. I was rescued from the scrap heap and taken to this life, a life better than the best I've known. That was not the plan on the day of June 23rd, 1988. I was in an abandoned building, and I got up off the floor to go out and hustle money, and I collapsed on the floor. Bill says the courage to do battle wasn't there. I didn't have it in me anymore. I had to run out of road, and what I have found out while we're out there getting in here, and when we're in here and bottoming out, I need to run out of road. Because if there's some lurking notion or reservation that somehow, some way I can control and enjoy this, I will. I was met with my first GOD. What I have found is a necessary requirement, and that is a gift of desperation. I couldn't invite that. I couldn't plan on that. It was given to me when my nails were dug in at the edge of a cliff. And the very same God who I had cursed and mocked at for so long, I begged for mercy, as I still do now. That kind of life isn't on me anymore. But never let me think that I've gotten bigger than asking God for mercy and surrendering to God in my brokenness, huh? And I got into the 7 treatment center. After 10 days, I got thirsty again. I wanted to go drink. And truly, by the grace of God, I wound up in Minnesota. And you got me this morning. In Alcoholics Anonymous, we talk a lot about but for the grace of God, but for the grace of God. And that's an unwarranted gift. We're just given that as God's children. He gives us this precious gift of free will in life, but for the grace of God. Keeps us out of harm's way many times. But I'm happy to report to you there's a big difference between getting the grace of God and experiencing that power which gives us grace. One is separateness and one is oneness. And they talk about that in step 5 promises, where we're walking hand in hand with the Spirit of the universe. There's no gap. We're finally locked in and integrated with God. One of the most freeing things was not coming to terms with, because I'm in AA and do the steps and follow the book, that I'm suddenly pristine and flawless. But the realization that I'll never be pristine and I'm broken and will always be broken, the realization of that was the aha moment where my dependence is truly upon God and not me. That He will take me like the wretch I am, and so will you. Because where we identify with each other truly, at the beginning especially, is in our brokenness. We get come up here and give you this wonderful big book talk and never give you testimony as to where we walked. It doesn't have as much depth and weight until you see the walk I walked and you identify with that brokenness or current brokenness, and we say, and this is the way out. And we find God speaks through brick walls when we're surrounded by 4 brick walls. When we hit our knees and beg for mercy, suddenly there's a voice saying, that's the way out. But I need to know you are in the same hole, and vice versa. When I got sober, I thought step 1 was, don't drink. And step 1 tells a guy like me, no, you are drinking. Step 1 tells alcoholics, you, Pete Marinelli, are going to drink. You're alcoholic. We have 43 pages in the big book that talk about step 1. 43 pages, not a chapter, not a couple of paragraphs, because they knew someone like me was going to be coming in 1988, and 1 chapter won't work on this guy. 43 pages. Of a lot of considerations and a lot of warnings that kind of opened me up a little bit as to what step 1's about. 7 treatment centers, I didn't know what step 1 was. I knew about feelings, I knew about issues, I knew about dysfunction, but I didn't know what alcoholism was. I had some recollection that once I start drinking, I can't stop, but that's the point. And when I wanted to stop and I had a powerful desire to stop, first my big book says that's no avail. Having a powerful desire to stop drinking means nothing in the face of alcoholism. But even when I did have some sort of desire to stop, I didn't know how to stay stopped. My mind would not allow that. Because when my body didn't need a drink, my mind says, yeah, you do. Because I can't do life on life's terms. It hurts. It hurts. Life hurts. We live in a world of impermanence. Life, if you think about it, with all the joys that we get to experience, all the wonderful things and the sacredness even of Alcoholics Anonymous, life is volatile. Unless you're deaf, dumb, and blind and don't watch the news, life is insane. People do evil things. We don't operate in that. I don't even operate when things are wonderful. Butterflies and rainbows, I will screw that up. I don't have a map. Because even when you're not saying anything, I know you're talking about me. And it's not good. So now I hate you. We don't even know each other, but I hate you. 43 pages. And if we look at doctor's opinion that talks about this phenomenon called craving, this allergy to alcohol and the mental obsession, we throw about another 10 pages in there. So we can safely say 53 pages of my big book, of your big book, talks about step One. And way before treatment centers and way before all these new gadgets and theories and medications as to how to get us well, Silky said way back when, he described this thing called a psychic change, which we know is a spiritual awakening, that would work for folks like us. Because I can sit in a therapist's office now till the cows come home, and I can have double-digit treatment centers behind me, and I could be a member of my religious community and get drunk as soon as I get there or on my way home. And Silky said way back then what we need was this psychic change, a different point of view, different perceptions and conceptions about everything. But first I need to surrender everything. And that means I have to run out of road. Because only in desperation am I letting go. So what does step 1 say in 43 pages? That I'm going to drink, the time and place is going to come, well, I will drink, and it doesn't care about being sober 5 years, 10 years, 30 years, 40 years. Alcoholism doesn't impress it. Cunning, baffling, and powerful, and patient. And because I'm a member of good standing in my home group, alcoholism is not impressed. Because I go to church every Sunday, alcoholism is not impressed. It'll lay around and just wait. I know we'll get them a relationship. I know we'll get her in money. We'll get them somewhere as soon as the guard is down. And the analogy I always like to use is some of us like to go to the gym and work out. So perhaps I want to get in shape and I join some fitness center. Want to get in shape, tone up a little bit. So I find a fitness center down the block. It opens up at 7 o'clock in the morning. I get there an hour early and help the people set the place up. I put the water out, get the towels out, I clean up a little bit. And as people are coming in, I'm greeting them at the door. Welcome to the fitness center. I'm there till the end. When the place closes, I'm there a little bit longer and wave goodnight. After 90 days of doing this, everybody knows me. I'm in worse shape after 90 days because during those 90 days, I haven't taken any action. We come to Alcoholics Anonymous, we get here early, we stay late, we do all the service things, we set up the coffee, we get the water out, we dust the place, we meet people at the door, and God forbid we crack a big book open and take some action. After 90 days, this doesn't work, I'm getting drunk. In fact, I'm probably a little bit worse because I'm even more resentful. I thought you said this place was going to work. So step 1 tells a guy like me I'm drinking. It says we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. They're giving you their experience. Hey, this is what happened to us. This is what we experienced. They're not theorizing. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. Here's how this looks. No power, powerless, no choice, and no control in the mind before I even pick up a drink. And trying to think the drink through means nothing because page 24 talks about this. That I can't bring into my mind with sufficient force the suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago. I'm without defense against the first drink. I can't think the drink through. I can't play the tape to the end. I can't remember where I come from. If that works for you, great. Maybe not a real alcoholic. Maybe the hard drinker. Maybe the social drinker. But the real alcoholic suffers from 3 things, and one of them is the mind. That I'm screwed before I even pick up a drink. While I'm sober is when I get drunk, by the way. You ever notice that? Leave treatment, sober, get drunk. Get out of jail, I'm never doing that again, sober, give me a double. I'll figure it out. Get drunk, sober. I did it every time after treatment. 6 out of 7 treatment centers on my own power, I managed 2 days sobriety, and that was after my 5th treatment center. My thing was AMA or get drunk within 20 minutes out of treatment, because I had to, because I couldn't breathe without it. So no power, choice, control in the mind before I even pick up a drink. And what happens once I pick up a drink? Because the mind will convince me to pick up a drink. I can't outrun that. Pick up a drink. What happens if I have the first drink? What do we need? The second drink. Have the second drink, need the third drink. For some of you little druggies out there, if you ever smoke crack, it's like having one hit off the pipe and say, I'll save the rest for Christmas. What a beautiful rock. Let's put this away for a good minute. So I have a drink. I used to love to drink. You were talking about Bacardi last night. Dark. The Jack Daniels, all of that stuff. I used to love that. And Jack and Coke. Finish it. Another one. Got to have another one. You don't leave. My body's in overdrive now. At the second one, I'm drunk. I'm third. As I said, I'm looking for pills. So the mind demands obedience. The mind convinces me, a pretty up a junkyard, convinces me to have a drink when everything in front of me says I'm going to lose the wife, I'm going to lose the kids, I'm going to lose the girlfriend, I'm going to lose the husband, lose my job, reputation, everything. I'm going to get locked up, health problems, whatever it might be. The stuff is going to hit the fan as soon as I get drunk. And the mind says, don't worry about it. I gotcha. Or sometimes we don't think at all. It's called a strange mental blank spot, and we're pounding on a bar asking for another. It just happens. That's alcoholism. And once it goes in, I have no power, choice, control in the body because the body goes into craving or more. My body demands more. You throw up, you get sick, you go back for more. And we go on drunks. The little addicts in here go on runs. We don't shoot dope for a day. We don't smoke crack just for the night. We don't just drink for a couple of hours. We go MIA. Because the craving's on. I'm alky. I know what that's about. The craving is on. My body's in overdrive. Keep it coming down. Regardless of everything's burning around me, keep it coming down. And the third thing I suffer from is something called a spiritual malady or a disconnection with God. Now, we can never be literally separated from this power called God. Figuratively speaking, we're separated. There's a feeling of separation between us and this power called God. And we can't will that relationship together. In order for me to have that happen, I had to relinquish my life, the death of this life. Complete surrender. We admitted, and our lives had become unmanageable. The essence of that word unmanageability is not knowing what the day is going to look like when alcohol calls and I go get drunk. The end of a perfect day, Fred says. Not a cloud on the horizon. Business went well. His health was good. Everything was firing on all cylinders. And mine says, get drunk. We just get drunk. Or we're sitting in an AA meeting and suddenly shows up. Suddenly the thought crosses my mind, a double vodka. Why not? I just made 90 days. How many folks we know go out right before the year and right after the year, huh? Where's that come from? That's the real unmanageability. But here's what I did, and we can get into this. That little dash that separates these two thoughts, first part of first step, step one, second part of step one, that dash becomes a wall. So you can't peek at either half of the step. So if you're anything like me, I was in the same clothes for a long time. I wasn't bathing. I wasn't eating. I had construction boots. The right boot had no front. Blood-stained soil clothes. 130 pounds urinating blood. Running around with Hep C. Marks all over my body. I'm in serious, serious trouble. I get sober. And after a while, getting sober, I get a little sober job. And I have clean clothes, and I'm bathing twice a day. And I'm eating 3 times a day. And I'm working out, and I'm putting on some weight, and I look sober. My life is no longer unmanageable. People know me. People like me. My life is no longer unmanageable. It appears to be very manageable. And now my point of view is on keeping it that way. Keeping those external conditions good. Look good, sound good, be good, get the girl, get the car, get all that stuff. Got to get that right because my life is manageable. I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous now. Because that wall has gone up and I can't see the first half of the first step which says, Pete, you're getting drunk. Unless we get a relationship with God, you are getting drunk because you're powerless over alcohol in the mind. You've been separated from alcohol for 60 days, 90 days, 5 years, 10 years. So the body's not craving, but the mind's another issue. And the only thing I can do to combat that mind is get God. Not protect myself from alcoholism because that's futile. We do that with defects. We do that with like protect ourselves from this stuff. That's not what this goal, the journey is about. It's about transcending all of that. Getting healed from all, not cured, healed from that stuff. And so I did. I'd spend time making sure the external world was correct. And I bottomed out. After 6 months in Alcoholics Anonymous, December 22nd, 1988, I was really thirsty because life hurt, AA hurt, everything hurt. I don't have a girlfriend yet. I got a little sober job. I got some clean clothes on. I'm shaving and bathing. People think I'm a nice guy, but the malady was still breathing. It didn't work anymore. So we get more stuff, get more money, and I toss and turn. And December 22nd, 1988, I was living in Minnesota. I got to get drunk. I got to put something in here. A pill, a powder, a drink, just something, because I'm not good here. It hurt again. The honeymoon, the newness of AA wore off. These people are serious about this stuff. I just want to go in, get the hugs, the handshakes, you look good, sit in the back, everything's groovy now. And by the grace of God, I wound up at this gentleman's door who lived in Cottage Grove, Minnesota. And I gave him my dramas, and he says, "Where are you with God in the 12 steps?" I said something like, "Well, when do you start the steps?" He says, "When you stop throwing up, you're late." Yeah. He didn't have me go to page 449, 3rd edition, read about acceptance. He didn't say, "Pete, let's talk about your feelings today." And he didn't give me a hug and say, "It's going to be okay. Let's go watch the sunset tonight." He says, "You're late." Because alcoholism loves this stuff. I got 43 pages in my book. Carl Jung tells Roland Haas, you have the mind of a chronic alcoholic. Doesn't talk about the body. What sort of thinking dominates an alcoholic who tries time after time the desperate experiment of the first drink? Over and over and over again, our book is aiming from pages 23 to 43 about the mind. More About Alcoholism is aimed at the mind, not to heal the mind, but to give us considerations to see how broken this mind is. I don't get when we tell a newcomer, bring the body and the mind will follow. You don't want that newcomer's mind showing up in the city of Toronto. The only thing that mind's going to do is get them drunk and maybe take you with them. We need to be completely out of our minds. You know when people say, "Oh, Joe's out of his mind, that's why he's having problems." No, Joe's in his mind, that's why he's having problems. When people like us are completely out of our minds, we are doing great. And if we think about it's only, Lord have mercy, it's only 10 to 10. From the time you woke up this morning till 10 to 10, how kind and loving and warm and fuzzy and rainbows and butterflies has your mind been to you? Right? One person, you drunk? Okay. How many folks drove here alone this morning in their car? Anybody drive alone this morning? You drove alone in your car this morning. Okay, I'm going to show you how much of a liar you are now. About those voices, right? If we think about the drive over here this morning, where I was alone in my car driving, how many people were in the back seat talking to you? Right? About 45 people. And one of those voices were pissed off at Allie because how come you didn't ask me? I'm spiritual to speak. Bring 2 ex-New Yorkers in. How dare he? You know. And then you're arguing, you're into all this stuff and hoping the future Mr. and Mrs. X is at this conference, and you got all this stuff going on, and you get out of the car and slam the door and throw the cigarette down, you walk across the threshold into here, and people say, "Hey, Joey, how you doing?" "I'm wonderful. Everything's beautiful." We get that deep sponsor voice going on. "I'm wonderful. How are you?" Then you get back in the car later on, son of a... Your sponsor calls, "How was the conference?" "It was wonderful. It was beautiful." Yeah. I, as an alcoholic, I qualify for hypocrisy right out of the gate, because that's how I would live for so long. You know, told you what you wanted to hear, but never believed any of it. Put on the AA game face just to be a part of. And I learned a very valuable lesson. It's okay to walk into Alcoholics Anonymous and say, "I am not good today. I'm hurting. I don't know what I need a sponsor. I'm getting thirsty. This is what's really going on." Pull someone aside and go outside. And by the way, they don't have to be sober longer than I am. They just need to be spiritually fit, working out in a spiritual gym called Alcoholics Anonymous. And sometimes we just need someone to listen. And someone who's awake is not ready to give you some wonderful feedback. They're just going to listen. 43 pages paint me into a corner, and I don't know the way out, which is exactly what 43 pages is supposed to do. Paint us into a corner where it looks like there's no way out. I'm screwed. I'm hopeless. I'm going to drink. No matter what's at stake, I'm going to drink. I'm an alcoholic. I've got that at a gut level. Because the big book's aimed at the heart, not the mind. That's called self-help. I come to a conclusion deep down in here, conceding to my innermost self. That's a spiritual event when that happens. It doesn't say come to a conclusion in the mind, but it comes to a place in here. I am alcoholic. I'm just like you've been describing. Once I start, I can't stop. When I don't want to drink, I continue to drink. When I'm drinking, I'm thinking about what's going to back it up. When I'm not drinking, how to get money to continue drinking. I've been in double-digit treatment centers. I've been in and out of prison. My life is falling apart, and the only thing my mind comes up with is get another drink to figure out how not to drink anymore. Because when I drink, I'm in control, I feel power, and I can breathe. I'm back in my skin again, regardless of the wreckage that's around me. And then we get to a place where we know the stuff's not working anymore. You know this is bad, but your body says, we don't care. We need a drink because my hands are doing this. How dark it is before the dawn, because that's the G-O-D, the gift of desperation. And when I finally got that, and it took an abandoned building, the back of a hallway, for me to feel completely hopeless, is when the carpenter shows up and says, hold my hand, I'll walk you out, because I let go of all control in that moment. When a book says a life which demands, not suggests, rigorous honesty of my condition and who I be at that moment, it came in the back of a hallway. I don't know if I'll ever be that honest again. But I was then, and it was given to me. A moment of clarity. And so we chop wood and carry water. And what they do in step 2 is point to a solution. That we will get to this place of sanity, wholeness of mind, truth, God. Where that same mind that told me to go drink is not doing that anymore because it's coming from God. It's godly, the transformation. When a book says get reborn and recreated, our point of view, perception, and conception about everything has shifted. We've done the 180 little by slowly, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. But what the 12 steps will do for folks like us is turn out spiritual awakening people. One of the greatest promises in the book is having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. Not like take a chance, see what happens. And step 2 is the pointer to get there. And they talk about these conceptions of God in chapter 3, Agnostics, one of my favorite chapters. And the problem, lack of power, is my dilemma. With power, no dilemma. Where do I get this power called God? It tells me how, where, and why to find God in chapter 2, Agnostics. Where? Deep down within, it was always there, the great reality. Why? Because I see you solving your problems upon a simple reliance upon the spirit of the universe. And how? Just got to lay aside old ideas. Prejudice and contempt, and be willing to try to get in a different lane, and only desperation will have me move into a different lane. Doesn't care what your conception is, doesn't care if you're religious. It's me who has a problem with God. God doesn't have a problem with me. It's us who have a problem with God. God doesn't have a problem with us. Because we come to God with belief systems, religions, attitudes, and ideas, which page 27 talks about. We show up to God that way, based on what my parents said, what culture said, whoever told us this stuff. And that's how we're supposed to have a relationship with God, with 200 different belief systems. And most of us show up to God with people who have taught us God who don't even practice that. Because most folks are in self-reliance. Now you tell me how to have a relationship with God. I got lots of contempt about this stuff. And a book says, just lay it aside. Not right, not wrong. Just lay it aside. And what I did, and I'll give it to Teresa here, is you, the group of drunks for good, orderly direction. Because I would see guys like Butch in the middle of this. I would see women like Marion in the middle of this, sponsoring people, going to meetings, and just their outlook upon life was light. And they were sober. And they all said it's because of God. Well, tell me how you got there. Because I'm no longer in a place of, I want this taken away, but leave that alone. I'm willing to be pruned down to the bark, which is necessary on this process. It's a constant pruning, a constant surrender, because a bad tree will bear bad fruit. And no one can eat from that vine, huh? But a good tree bears good fruit, and people can eat from that vine. That's what we do in Alcoholics Anonymous. So when I saw people like Butch and Marion doing this life, I said, what are you doing? Because all the other knuckleheads are just hanging out. And he says, we got it in here. Do you need a sponsor? Yeah, follow me. And I was going to get to this place of sanity where my mind is not telling me to drink or do unspiritual things anymore as a result of a relationship with God. That's all I got. Peace.
Guys, this is not a big break. 5 minutes, please. Our break is coming after Teresa. She's going to go for 30 minutes at 10:30. Just please 5 minutes, okay?